The steel hull groaned under pressure. Captain William Ironhand Carter stood motionless in the control room of USS Barracuda, his weathered hands gripping the edge of the navigation table. Around him, 23 men moved with practiced precision through the submarine's narrow corridors. They trusted him completely. But tonight, something felt wrong. "Depth holding at 280 meters, Captain," Lieutenant Hayes reported, his voice steady despite the tension coiling through the vessel like a living thing. Carter nodded without looking at him. His eyes remained fixed on the sonar display, watching the green phosphorescent line sweep across the screen in endless circles. Nothing. Just the vast emptiness of the Pacific Ocean, 300 nautical miles west of San Diego. It was supposed to be a routine training exercise. Take the Barracuda deep, run silent for 12 hours, surface at dawn. Simple. Clean. The kind of mission Carter could run in his sleep after 30 years in the service. But Seaman Rodriguez hadn't spoken in 20 minutes. The sonar operator hunched over his equipment, headphones pressed so tight against his ears that the rubber seals left red marks on his skin. His fingers trembled slightly as they hovered over the controls, adjusting frequencies, filtering out background noise, searching for something he couldn't quite identify. "Rodriguez," Carter's voice cut through the quiet hum of the submarine's systems. "Report." The young seaman flinched. He pulled one headphone away from his ear, but his eyes never left the display. "Sir, I'm picking up something strange." Hayes crossed the compartment in 3 strides. "Define strange." "A signal, sir. Very faint. It's—" Rodriguez swallowed hard. "It's a distress call." The control room fell silent. Every man within earshot stopped what he was doing. Distress calls at this depth were rare. Distress calls in the middle of the Pacific, 300 miles from the nearest shipping lane, were impossible. Carter moved to the sonar station. "Play it." Rodriguez hesitated, his finger hovering over the playback button. "Sir, you need to understand. This signal, it's not modern. Play it, Seaman." The speakers crackled to life. Through layers of static and the deep throb of ocean current came a sound that made every man in the control room go cold. Morse code. Slow, deliberate, repeating in an endless loop. SOS, SOS, SOS. But that wasn't what made Carter's blood run cold. It was the quality of the signal, the rhythm, the deliberate spacing between each letter. He'd heard transmissions like this before, decades ago, when he was a young lieutenant serving under Captain Morrison aboard the USS Thresher. This was a manual transmission. Someone was tapping out that signal by hand. "Get me a bearing," Carter said quietly. Rodriguez worked his controls, his face pale in the green glow of the display. "Signal bearing 270 degrees, range—" "Jesus, Captain! Range is less than 2 miles. Whatever's sending that signal is right on top of us." Hayes grabbed a chart, spreading it across the navigation table. His finger traced their current position, then moved west-northwest, following the bearing Rodriguez had provided. When he found what he was looking for, his hand stopped moving. "Sir," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "That's the Scorpion site." The name hung in the air like a curse. Every submariner knew the story. USS Scorpion, nuclear-powered attack submarine, lost with all hands in May 1968. 99 men. The Navy had searched for months, finally locating the wreckage 5 years later, scattered across the ocean floor at a depth of 11,000 feet. That was 57 years ago. "The Scorpion is 3 miles down," Hayes continued. "We're at 280 meters. There's no way we're picking up a signal from that wreck." But Rodriguez shook his head, his headphones now hanging around his neck. "Sir, I can hear it clear as day, and it's not coming from below us. It's coming from our depth, maybe shallower." Carter felt something cold settle in his chest. He'd served in these waters for 3 decades. He knew every wreck, every reef, every underwater canyon. There was nothing at this depth, nothing for 300 miles in any direction. "All stop," he ordered. "Rig for silent running." The submarine's engines cycled down to their quietest setting. The ventilation fans slowed. Men moved through the corridors on soft feet, speaking in whispers. In the profound silence that followed, the signal became clearer. "SOS, SOS. This is US Scorpion. Position." The transmission cut off mid-sequence, replaced by a sound that made Rodriguez rip his headphones off entirely. A metallic groan, deep and resonant, like a massive structure bending under impossible pressure. Then silence. "Did anyone else hear that?" Rodriguez whispered. Every man in the control room nodded. Carter picked up the headphones, placing them over his ears. He adjusted the frequency, fine-tuning the reception. The SOS signal had stopped, but there was something else now. A rhythmic sound, slow and deliberate, almost like footsteps, metal striking metal in a steady cadence. Someone walking through a steel corridor, but that was impossible. There were no other vessels in this area. The Barracuda's sonar would have detected anything larger than a dolphin. "Rodriguez, go active. Full sweep." The sonar operator hesitated. Active sonar would reveal their position to anything in the water, but right now, Carter needed answers more than stealth. Rodriguez keyed the system, sending out a powerful pulse that spread through the dark water like a shock wave. The return signal painted a picture that defied explanation. 2 miles to the west, at a depth of 250 meters, something massive appeared on the display. The sonar return showed a submarine, roughly the same size as the Barracuda. But the shape was wrong. The lines were too clean, too angular. This wasn't a modern vessel with its smooth, hydrodynamic hull. This was something older. "Run the profile through the database," Carter ordered. Hayes worked the computer, comparing the sonar image against every known submarine class in the Navy's archives. When the match came back, he went white. "Sir, the computer identifies it as a skipjack-class nuclear attack submarine. USS Scorpion was the last of that class." "That's impossible," Rodriguez said. "The Scorpion is 3 miles down. We're looking at wreckage." But Carter knew better. He'd seen the photographs of the Scorpion wreckage. The submarine had imploded under pressure, breaking into 6 major pieces scattered across a debris field half a mile wide. What they were looking at on sonar was intact, whole, operational. "Lieutenant Hayes, what's the official depth rating for a skipjack-class submarine?" Hayes didn't need to check the manual. 700 feet, Captain. After that, the hull integrity becomes compromised. And we're currently at 920 feet, sir. If that's really a skipjack out there, it should have crushed like a tin can 200 feet ago." The metallic footsteps continued, echoing through the water with perfect clarity. And now, Carter heard something else, a voice. Faint, distorted by distance and pressure, but unmistakably human. "Anyone receiving? This is Captain Francis Slattery, USS Scorpion. Need immediate assistance. Hull breach in compartment 3. We are sinking." Hayes grabbed Carter's arm. "Captain Slattery died in 1968. That transmission can't be real." But it was real. Carter had known Frank Slattery. They'd served together briefly in the early 60s, before Slattery took command of the Scorpion. The voice coming through the speakers was his. Older, strained with panic, but definitely him. "Get me a visual," Carter ordered. "Launch the observation drone." A small, unmanned vehicle deployed from the Barracuda's hull, its camera lights cutting through the darkness as it moved toward the mysterious contact. The feed appeared on a monitor in the control room, showing nothing but empty water and the occasional flash of bioluminescent organisms. Then the submarine came into view. Several men gasped. Rodriguez made the sign of the cross. The USS Scorpion floated in the water like a ghost. Its hull showed signs of damage, scorch marks, dents, a massive crack running along the port side, but it was intact, whole. The numbers 59 were still visible on the conning tower, painted in white against the black hull, but that wasn't the most disturbing part. Through one of the portholes, something moved, a shadow, human-shaped. "Zoom in. On that porthole," Carter commanded, his voice tight. The drone's camera adjusted, bringing the small window into sharp focus. For just a moment, a face appeared in the glass, pale, staring. Then it vanished back into the darkness. "Jesus Christ," Hayes breathed. "There's someone in there." The radio crackled again, and this time the voice was clearer. "To any vessel receiving this transmission, we have been on the bottom for I don't know how long. Systems failing. Crew is... Please, if anyone can hear this." Carter grabbed the radio microphone. "Scorpion, This is USS Barracuda. We read you. What is your situation? Silence. Then, slowly, a response. Barracuda? Is that really you? We've been trying to reach someone for... It's been so long. The darkness. We can't tell anymore. Scorpion, confirm your position and status. Another long pause. When Slattery's voice returned, it was different. Confused. We're at crush depth. The hull is failing. We tried to surface, but the ballast tanks... Something's wrong with the ballast tanks. We keep sinking, but we're not. We should be dead by now. The pressure should have... Why aren't we dead? Hayes leaned close to Carter, whispering urgently. Sir, this has to be some kind of recording. A delayed transmission, maybe equipment malfunction. Slattery has been dead for 57 years. But Carter watched the monitor, watched the shadow moving behind that porthole, and knew this was no recording. Scorpion, stand by. We're going to attempt a rescue operation. No! The response came fast, almost panicked. No, don't come closer. Something's wrong here. The crew, they're not right. After we sank, after the lights went out, things started to change. We can hear things outside the hull. Voices that aren't human. And the men. Some of them aren't men anymore. They just stand in the corridors staring. Not moving. Not breathing. Just staring. Rodriguez pulled his headphones off again, his hands shaking. Captain, I'm picking up more signals now. Multiple sources, all around us. How many? I can't get an accurate count. At least 20, maybe more. All broadcasting the same thing. SOS signals. Different ships, different voices. Some of them in languages I don't recognize. The observation drone's camera swept across the darkness, and more shapes emerged from the gloom. Submarines. Dozens of them. Floating at impossible depths, their hulls showing various stages of decay and damage. Some were modern, their paint fresh and bright. Others looked ancient, riveted steel hulls from the World War II era, and they were all transmitting distress signals. Carter recognized some of the hull numbers. USS Thresher, Soviet submarine K-19, French vessel Minerve, British boat HMS Affray. Each one a documented loss. Each one supposed to be resting on the ocean floor, crushed under miles of water. But here they were, suspended in the darkness like moths around a flame, all of them broadcasting the same desperate plea for help that had been echoing unanswered for decades. Sir, Hayes said, his voice cracking, we need to surface. Now. This isn't natural. But Carter couldn't look away from the monitor. The drone had circled back to the Scorpion, and now he could see more details. The crack in the hull was larger than he'd initially thought, a jagged tear that should have flooded the submarine instantly. But through that tear, he could see interior lights, flickering, dim, but definitely active. And he could see crew members moving through the corridors. They moved slowly, deliberately, like men walking through deep water. Their faces were pale, almost luminescent in the weak light. And their eyes. Captain! Rodriguez's voice broke through Carter's thoughts. Something's happening to our systems. The navigation computer just went offline. Ballast control isn't responding. We're sinking. The depth gauge confirmed it. 920 feet. 930. 940. The Barracuda was descending, slowly but steadily, pulled down by an invisible force. Emergency blow, Carter ordered. Maximum ascent. Hayes slammed his hand on the emergency ballast blow control. Compressed air should have flooded the ballast tanks, pushing water out and lifting the submarine toward the surface. But nothing happened. The depth gauge continued its relentless climb. 980 feet, 1,000 feet, 1020. The hull groaned under increasing pressure. Rivets began to weep, small droplets of seawater forming on the interior walls. The Barracuda was designed for a maximum depth of 800 feet. Every foot beyond that increased the risk of catastrophic hull failure, and they were still sinking. All back emergency, Carter commanded. Get us away from those wrecks. The engines roared to life, driving the submarine backward, but the descent didn't slow. If anything, it accelerated. The radio crackled one more time. Slattery's voice, calm now, almost resigned. I understand now. This is where submarines come to die, Captain. Not on the surface, not in dry dock. Here, in the darkness, where the pressure crushes everything except the guilt. The missions we ran, the people we killed, the orders we followed without question, it all stays down here, waiting, growing, until it pulls us back. 1,100 feet, 50. We tried to leave, Slattery continued. Every day for years, decades. We don't know anymore. Time doesn't work the same down here, but we can't surface. The darkness won't let us. And now you're here. Fresh guilt, fresh sins. The darkness can smell it on you, Carter. I can smell it on you. Carter's mind flashed to Malta, the hospital ship, the 72 dead, the investigation he'd somehow walked away from while better men lost their careers. You remember, don't you? Slattery's voice was almost gentle now. The ones who died because of your orders. They're here too, waiting. They want to show you something. The observation drone's camera swiveled, focusing on one of the other derelict submarines. Through a porthole, Carter saw faces pressed against the glass, faces he recognized. Nurses, doctors, all wearing the same white uniforms they'd died in 18 months ago. And they were staring directly at the camera, directly at him. 1,250 feet, 1,300. The hull began to buckle. A rivet popped loose, sending a jet of seawater spraying across the control room. Men scrambled to seal the leak, while others braced themselves against the walls as the submarine tilted at a steeper angle. "Captain, we have to abandon ship," Hayes shouted over the groaning metal. "We need to get to the escape trunk before..." "Before what, Lieutenant?" Carter cut him off. "We're at 1,300 feet and sinking. The escape trunks won't work at this depth. The pressure would kill us before we surfaced." Another rivet failed. Then another. Water began to flood into the control room in earnest now, cold and dark and smelling of salt and decay. Rodriguez was praying in Spanish, his rosary clutched tight in shaking hands. Other crew members had abandoned their stations, clustering together in small groups, holding on to each other as the submarine groaned and twisted under impossible pressure. 1,400 feet, 1,450. Carter looked at the monitor one last time. The observation drone was still transmitting, still showing the ring of ghost submarines floating in the darkness. But now he could see something else. Beyond the wrecks, deeper in the water, something massive was moving. A shadow so large it blocked out what little light filtered down from above. It had no definable shape. It was just darkness, solid, alive, hungry, and it was rising to meet them. The radio crackled one final time. "Welcome home, Captain. We've been waiting for you." Then the lights went out. In the absolute darkness, Carter heard his crew screaming, felt the submarine shudder and groan as the hull finally gave way, felt the rush of icy water as the ocean claimed them, but he didn't feel death. Instead, he felt the submarine settle, level out. The water that should have been flooding in stopped at knee height, as if held back by an invisible barrier. Emergency lights flickered to life, bathing the control room in dim red light. Hayes was still standing at his station, water dripping from his uniform, his face pale with shock. Rodriguez clutched his rosary, his lips still moving in silent prayer. One by one, the other crew members picked themselves up, checking for injuries, staring at each other in confusion and terror. "Sound off!" Carter ordered, his voice hoarse. "Damage report." "Captain!" Hayes checked the depth gauge, then checked it again, as if unable to believe what he was seeing. We're at 3,000 feet. That's impossible. The hull we should all be dead." But they weren't dead. The Barracuda sat on the ocean floor, surrounded by other submarines, all of them broadcasting their endless distress signals into the darkness. And somewhere in that darkness, something vast and hungry waited. Carter walked to the porthole, pressing his face against the cold glass. Outside, he could see lights, the running lights of dozens of submarines, stretching away into the distance like a sunken city. And in every porthole of every submarine, he saw faces staring back, waiting. Rodriguez's voice cut through the silence, small and terrified. "Captain, how long until they send a rescue team?" Carter didn't answer. He couldn't tell him the truth. Couldn't tell him that the Barracuda had just joined the graveyard of lost submarines. that they would sit here, broadcasting their SOS signal into the void, waiting for the next vessel to hear their call, waiting to welcome them home. The radio crackled to life again, and this time it was a new voice. Young, scared, transmitting in Morse code, SOS, SOS. This is USS Barracuda. Hayes looked at Carter, his eyes wide with horror. Sir, we're not transmitting. I didn't activate the emergency beacon. But the signal continued, tapped out by invisible hands, adding their voice to the chorus of the dead and the lost and the forgotten. The submarines that came to the darkness and never left. Carter touched the glass of the porthole one more time, watching the shadows move in the deep water beyond. Watching the thing that lived in the darkness circle their tomb, patient and eternal. Turn off the lights, he said quietly. Conserve power. We're going to be here for a long time. And in the darkness of the USS Barracuda, 23 men realized that they had just become the newest ghosts in an underwater cemetery where submarines came to die and where their crews learned that some missions never end. They just wait, in the dark, for the next vessel to hear their call. The signal continues even now, broadcasting from 3,000 feet below the surface, waiting for someone to answer, waiting for the next submarine to investigate the mysterious SOS, waiting to welcome them home.